Welcome to the Trackpads Podcast, your go-to destination for exploring the rich history, strategies, and leadership lessons of warfare. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast and sign up for the weekly newsletter. You can also explore more by visiting trackpads.com. The Battle of Saint-Mihiel. In the pre-dawn hours of September 12, 1918, a thunderous artillery barrage shattered the silence over the Saint-Mihiel salient in northeastern France. The night sky flickered with the flashes of over 3,000 Allied guns, lighting up the rain-soaked battlefield as shells crashed into German trenches. From their positions, 550,000 American and French troops prepared to launch the first major offensive led solely by the American Expeditionary Forces in World War I. For many of the doughboys, this would be their first taste of large-scale combat. For General John J. Pershing, it was a moment of truth, an opportunity to prove that the United States Army could stand on its own against Germany's battle-hardened forces. The Battle of Saint-Mihiel, fought from September 12 to 15, 1918, was a pivotal clash in the closing months of the war. The Germans had held this sector for 4 years, using it as a launch point for offensives and a defensive stronghold. By the fall of 1918, as German forces weakened and shifted to defensive operations, the Allies saw an opportunity. If the Americans could break through, they would eliminate a major German position and clear the way for the Meuse-Argonne offensive, the final push to victory. Yet the battle was more than just a strategic maneuver. It was a defining moment for the United States in World War I. The American Expeditionary Forces, which had largely played a supporting role until now, would finally prove its independence and combat effectiveness. The stakes were high. A decisive American victory could cement the country's place as a global military power, while failure might undermine its standing among the war's seasoned European allies. What followed was a rapid and coordinated assault that demonstrated American firepower, mobility, and air superiority, though not without significant challenges. Historical context. By 1918, World War I had dragged on for nearly 4 years, leaving Europe devastated by relentless trench warfare. The Western Front, stretching from the North Sea to Switzerland, was a vast network of fortified trenches, barbed wire, and artillery positions, where progress was measured in yards rather than miles. The war had become a brutal contest of attrition, with each side seeking a breakthrough that never seemed to come. For the Allies, France, Britain, and now the United States, defeating Germany required not only manpower, but also a shift in strategy. One of the most persistent features of the Western Front was the Saint-Mihiel salient, a 25-mile wide and 15-mile deep bulge in the Allied lines in northeastern France. The Germans had held this territory since 1914, after repelling early French attempts to retake it. From this position, German forces threatened critical supply lines and railways, particularly those leading to the strategic city of Verdun, where some of the war's most horrific battles had taken place. The salient gave the Germans a strong defensive position, but it also left them vulnerable, jutting out into enemy territory and exposed to encirclement if the Allies could coordinate a strong enough offensive. By mid-1918, the tide of war had begun to shift. The German spring offensives, launched earlier in the year, had pushed deep into Allied territory but ultimately failed to break the front. The Allies counterattacked with a series of offensives, reclaiming ground and forcing the Germans into a defensive posture. At the same time, the United States had fully entered the war, bringing over 2 million fresh troops to the Western Front. The arrival of the American Expeditionary Forces under General John J. Pershing provided a critical boost to Allied manpower, though many questioned whether the Americans, largely untested in large-scale European warfare, could fight effectively against seasoned German troops. Pershing was determined to prove that the American Expeditionary Forces could operate independently rather than simply reinforcing British and French divisions. His insistence on an autonomous American army was a matter of national pride and military necessity. The Battle of Saint-Mihiel would be the first major United States-led offensive of the war, giving Pershing a chance to showcase his force's capabilities. If successful, the battle would not only eliminate a dangerous German position, but also set the stage for the Meuse-Argonne offensive, the final campaign that would bring the war to a close. In preparation for the battle, the Allies amassed a massive force of over 550,000 troops, including over 300,000 Americans, 3,000 artillery pieces, 148 tanks led by Colonel George S. Patton, and the largest air operation of the war, coordinated by Colonel Billy Mitchell. German forces, numbering around 50,000, were already planning a strategic withdrawal from the salient, but Pershing's attack would strike before they could fully execute their retreat. The stage was set for one of the most decisive engagements of the war. The battle itself. As the clock struck 1 in the morning on September 12, 1918, the Allied assault on Saint-Mihiel commenced with an overwhelming 4-hour artillery bombardment. Over 3,000 American and French guns unleashed fire upon German positions, shattering trenches, communication lines, and machine gun nests. The night sky was illuminated by the constant flashes of exploding shells, and the ground trembled under the relentless barrage. In addition to high explosive shells, gas attacks added another layer of devastation, forcing German troops to either retreat or fight while wearing their cumbersome masks. By 5 in the morning, as the first light of dawn cut through the lingering smoke and mist, 550,000 Allied troops surged forward. The American First Corps under Lieutenant General Hunter Liggett advanced from the west, while Fourth Corps, commanded by Major General Joseph Dickman, attacked from the southeast. This was a coordinated pincer movement aimed at encircling the German forces before they could withdraw. The French Second Colonial Corps supported the Americans by securing the southern flank, ensuring that German reinforcements could not interfere. The assault was accompanied by a rolling artillery barrage, a technique where shells continuously landed just ahead of advancing infantry, forcing the enemy to remain in cover until the last moment. This tactic, though effective, required precise timing to avoid friendly fire. As American doughboys pushed forward, they found that much of the barbed wire had been shredded by artillery, allowing for a relatively swift advance in some areas. In other sectors, however, German machine gun nests remained intact, pouring fire into American ranks. On the western flank, Liggett's First Corps encountered stiff resistance from well-entrenched German defenders. Machine gun fire raked through advancing infantry, and pockets of German troops held their ground in fortified positions. Yet, the Americans pushed forward, relying on grenades and close-quarters combat to clear the trenches. Engineers worked quickly to dismantle remaining barbed wire obstacles, while flamethrowers were used to eliminate stubborn machine gun emplacements. To the east, Dickman's Fourth Corps met a different scenario. Many German units had already begun withdrawing, leaving behind only rearguard forces tasked with delaying the American advance. Some German soldiers surrendered immediately, while others fought desperately, utilizing artillery fire and well-placed machine guns to slow the attackers. Despite these obstacles, the Americans overran key German fortifications and supply depots, capturing thousands of tons of ammunition and rations. One of the battle's defining features was the use of tanks. 148 Renault light tanks, led by Colonel George S. Patton, spearheaded the attack, crushing barbed wire and breaking through defensive positions. The lightweight mobile tanks provided fire support for the infantry, rolling into trenches and clearing pathways. However, many tanks became stuck in mud or broke down, forcing troops to advance without armor in several key areas. This revealed the limitations of early tank warfare, but also foreshadowed the role of mechanized units in future conflicts. Above the battlefield, the largest air operation of World War I unfolded. Under the direction of Colonel Billy Mitchell, over 1,500 Allied aircraft took part in the assault. Fighters swept the skies of German planes, while bombers and reconnaissance aircraft targeted enemy supply lines, artillery positions, and retreating columns. This was one of the first instances of coordinated air-ground warfare, demonstrating the growing importance of air superiority. German troops, unused to such an aerial onslaught, struggled to regroup as bombs rained down on their convoys and strongpoints. By midday on September 12th, the American advance was proceeding faster than anticipated. German resistance in several key sectors crumbled and entire units surrendered en masse. By the evening, the pincer movement had nearly closed, trapping thousands of German soldiers who had not yet managed to withdraw. American forces continued to press forward, capturing dozens of artillery batteries and supply depots along the way. As the battle progressed into September 13th, the Saint-Mihiel salient was collapsing. German troops who had not managed to escape faced encirclement and capture. Some tried to break out, launching hasty counterattacks, but they lacked coordination and were quickly repulsed by American artillery and machine gun fire. The battle was becoming a one-sided rout, with German forces in full retreat toward the Hindenburg Line further north. By September 14th, American and French forces had effectively wiped the Saint-Mihiel salient off the map. The once imposing German stronghold, which had threatened Allied logistics and communications for 4 years, was now completely under American control. Thousands of German prisoners were rounded up, and abandoned weapons and supplies were seized. The battle had lasted only 56 hours, far shorter than initial Allied estimates. Despite the overwhelming success, the battle had not been without costs. American forces suffered over 7,000 casualties, while German losses totaled around 17,000, including those killed, wounded, or captured. While these numbers were relatively light compared to other major battles of the war, the engagement highlighted both strengths and weaknesses in American military operations. Logistics and supply lines struggled to keep up with the rapid advance, and coordination between tanks, infantry, and artillery still needed refinement. Nevertheless, Saint-Mihiel was a resounding victory, showcasing the effectiveness of American-led offensives. The battle demonstrated Pershing's ability to command a large-scale operation, validated the tactical use of tanks and aircraft in modern warfare, and set the stage for the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, the largest American campaign of World War I. It was a defining moment, proving that the United States was no longer just a supporting power, but a decisive force in the war's final chapter. Outcome and immediate impact. With the Saint-Mihiel salient eradicated, the Allies had removed a major German stronghold that had loomed over the region since 1914. The success of the operation meant that vital rail lines and supply routes were now fully in Allied hands, allowing for more efficient movement of troops and resources. More importantly, it set the stage for the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, the massive Allied push that would become the largest and deadliest battle in American history, ultimately helping bring World War I to an end. For General John J. Pershing, the battle was a validation of American military strength and independence. He had resisted calls from European allies to simply integrate American troops into British and French armies, instead insisting that the American Expeditionary Forces fight under its own command. The swift victory at Saint-Mihiel proved that the American Expeditionary Forces was capable of planning and executing a major offensive, silencing critics who doubted American combat readiness. On the German side, the loss of the salient was not unexpected but still damaging. German high command had already considered withdrawing from the position, recognizing that it was becoming untenable. However, Pershing's speed and forcefulness caught them before they could execute a full retreat in an orderly manner, leading to tens of thousands of German troops being captured or killed. The defeat further weakened German morale as their defensive lines shrank and the war increasingly seemed unwinnable. In the United States, news of the victory was met with celebration and national pride. The American press hailed the battle as proof that United States forces were not just reinforcements for the Allies, but a formidable fighting force in their own right. Stories of tanks rolling through barbed wire, air power decimating German retreat routes, and American doughboys pushing forward despite enemy fire filled newspapers, boosting public confidence in the war effort. However, despite the resounding victory, the battle also exposed logistical weaknesses that Pershing and his staff would need to address. Supply lines struggled to keep up with the rapid American advance, and issues with coordination between infantry, artillery, and tanks became apparent. These challenges would have to be corrected before the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, where the American Expeditionary Forces would face even fiercer German resistance in more complex terrain. Ultimately, Saint-Mihiel was not just a military victory but a statement, a demonstration that the United States was now a major player on the world stage, capable of leading its own campaigns and influencing the course of the war. It was a crucial step in the final drive to victory, showing that the Allies had the momentum and manpower to bring Germany to its knees. Legacy and analysis. The Battle of Saint-Mihiel marked a turning point not only in World War I, but also in the evolution of American military power. It was the first large-scale independent United States offensive in a European war, demonstrating that the American Expeditionary Forces were capable of conducting a major operation with modern combined arms tactics. No longer just an auxiliary force supporting the British and French, the United States had arrived as a significant military power, a status it would retain throughout the 20th century. One of the most enduring lessons from the battle was the importance of coordination between infantry, artillery, tanks, and air power. The operation at Saint-Mihiel was one of the first examples of an integrated air-ground offensive, with Billy Mitchell's massive aerial campaign providing essential reconnaissance, bombing, and air superiority. While still in its infancy, this use of air power would shape future conflicts, laying the groundwork for the tactical air support that would become standard in World War II and beyond. The battle also showcased the growing role of mechanized warfare. Colonel George S. Patton's tanks, despite their limited numbers and mechanical issues, proved their value in breaching defensive positions and supporting infantry. While many tanks broke down in the muddy terrain, the psychological impact on enemy troops was undeniable. Lessons from Saint-Mihiel would directly influence tank doctrine in the interwar years, eventually leading to the development of armored divisions that would dominate future battlefields. Strategically, the victory at Saint-Mihiel had long-term consequences for the war effort. It enabled the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, the final and largest American-led campaign of the war, which contributed to Germany's ultimate surrender just 2 months later. More broadly, it underscored the decline of the German military position as their defensive lines grew thinner and their ability to counterattack weakened. By September 1918, Germany was increasingly fighting a war of desperation, trying to delay the inevitable rather than achieving victory. In a larger historical context, Saint-Mihiel reinforced the United States' emerging role as a global military power. The battle's success proved the effectiveness of United States troops, leadership, and strategy, dispelling doubts among European allies. It also set a precedent for future American military doctrine, emphasizing logistics, mobility, and combined arms operations. Many of the key figures in this battle, including Pershing, Patton, and Mitchell, would go on to shape United States military policy and strategy in the years leading to World War II. The Battle of Saint-Mihiel was more than just a tactical victory. It was a defining moment for the American Expeditionary Forces and the future of United States military power. In just 56 hours, the American Expeditionary Forces had eliminated a 4-year-old German stronghold, captured thousands of prisoners, and demonstrated the effectiveness of American-led offensives. The battle proved that the United States was not just a supporting ally in World War I, but a formidable force capable of independent strategic operations. Beyond its immediate impact, the battle shaped the evolution of modern warfare. The integration of tanks, air power, artillery, and infantry in a coordinated attack at Saint-Mihiel foreshadowed the strategies that would dominate future wars. Though logistical issues and command coordination still needed refinement, the battle provided valuable lessons that would influence United States military doctrine for decades to come. Today, Saint-Mihiel stands as a symbol of America's emergence as a global military power, a nation no longer confined to its own borders, but willing to engage in the great conflicts of the world. The courage and determination displayed by American forces in this battle laid the foundation for future military engagements, from World War II to the modern era. In the mud and trenches of northeastern France, the United States proved that it was ready to take its place among the world's leading military powers, a role that it continues to hold today. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Trackpads Podcast. Don't forget to check out the Trackpads online newsletter, where we take things to the next level with multimedia content. Each issue features fascinating and informative photos, videos, and articles that bring the stories of military life to you in a dynamic and engaging way. Be sure to subscribe at trackpads.com to stay informed and entertained. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the incredible world of military history and life.